In simplest terms, futures are a financial contract wherein two parties agree on the price of an asset in the future. For example, we both agree that I will pay you $10,000 next week for 1 Bitcoin, even if its price by then is at $20,000, because it could just as easily be at $4,000. The contract specifications of futures define the product that is traded. The basic components of a futures contract are underlying asset, date and time of expiry, mode of settlement, cash or physical, contract size, type of futures contract, vanilla or inverse, tick size.
Underlying asset refers to the asset that the futures are based on. Examples include Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. There are two ways of settling a futures contract: cash-settled or physical delivery. Cash-settled futures require a spot price index to determine the settlement price. In this way, no underlying asset changes hands. Instead, the profit and loss is calculated from the trade price to the settlement price, and parties are credited/debited on their trading accounts accordingly. Examples of exchanges that are cash-settled are BitMEX, OKEX and CME. Physical delivery futures requires the buyer to buy the underlying asset from the seller at expiry. This implies that the seller must own the underlying asset at expiry for the purposes of delivery. Examples of exchanges that mandate physical delivery are Bakkt and CoinFlex. Contract size differs from contract to contract. The contract size for CME Bitcoin futures is 5 BTC, while the size for Bakkt Bitcoin futures is 1 BTC. Do read the contract specifications before trading. There are two types of futures contracts in the space: vanilla and inverse. A vanilla futures contract has its contract size in the base asset, for example, 0.1 BTC in a BTC/USD underlying. An inverse futures contract has its contract size in the quote asset, for example, $1 in a BTC/USD underlying. The inverse futures contract is most apparent on exchanges that calculate profit and loss in BTC terms, BitMEX, OKEX, Deribit, etc. Tick size refers to the small price increment of the contract. For example, BitMEX has a 50 cents tick size for their futures, while CME has a $5 tick. If you want to know how to buy futures, you've got two options. The first option is to go via a regulated futures exchange such as the CME Group, which was one of the first exchanges to bring Bitcoin futures to institutional investors. The second option for buying futures is to go via an exchange, which is becoming increasingly popular with the retail investor. These types of trading platforms don't need to jump through as many regulatory hoops to get going, and they can also be a lot more responsive to user feedback. Notable exchanges offering these derivatives include OKEX, Huobi and Binance. They also have a slightly different model for delivering futures contracts, so it's worth checking out all your options.